One day, my friend invited me on a hike. Even though Dan and I live in the same city, we haven't seen each other for at least 5 years. We never have the time, or we're both busy with our lives, our problems, families, work, regular lives basically. Neither one of us had time for a vacation in a while. Not only had we not seen each other for a long time, but we hadn't been out to nature in a long time either. So we wanted to go fishing, but also to catch up on each other's lives. The area we lived in was beautiful. The taiga stretched out for miles, as did the rivers and rocky shores and lakes. We chose a spot on the map based on the recommendation of some hunters we knew. It wasn't far from the city and the village, so if anything were to go wrong, we could ask the locals for an overnight stay or take shelter from bad weather. The hunters also gave us a letter for the local forester, since they said he was a harsh man who strictly observed order on his territory. They wanted to make sure there would be no misunderstanding or conflict if we came across him. We easily found the village and then went into the forest and set up camp near the river. We spent the entire day fishing. The bite was excellent, and as it started to get dark, we cooked fish soup in a pot over an open fire. It was already late in the evening when suddenly a man came out to our fire from behind the nearest bush. Dan and I immediately realized who he was. The man looked strong and impressive, handsome too, even though he clearly wasn't young anymore, as his hair and beard were visibly graying. It was the local forester, Duke, the one our hunter friends warned us about as being harsh. He checked our documents, took a look around our campsite, and was about to leave. But then my friend handed him the letter from the hunters. After reading it, the old man immediately cheered up and even looked kinder, as a smile lit up his previously gloomy face. I saw the light from the fire on the shore, so I decided to come and check who was setting up camp by the river. Please don't be offended, it's just my job. There have been many poachers around here lately. The forester sighed heavily. We really liked Duke, so we invited him to hang out. The fish soup was boiling in the pot for a long time and smelled deliciously, so the forester was glad to accept our invitation. Thank you, I'd love that. I spent all day doing my rounds, and now I'm so tired that my legs are buzzing, so I'll take a little rest with you. Duke turned out to be a very interesting man. Despite his formidable appearance, he was a kind and compassionate person with extensive life experience. Duke, tell us something about your life, your work, the life of the locals. I'm sure you've looked into the eyes of a wild animal more than once, my friend asked the forester. The night is still young, so we've got time. Well, I do love to talk, and there aren't a lot of people I could talk to around here, so if you're asking, get ready to listen, Duke replied. I'll tell you the story, but you might not believe me. It's up to you. Since ancient times, our land has been famous as the habitat of predators with the sacred white mark on their chest. To tell you the truth, I was lucky enough to see one of these special wolves once, although it was only from afar. Nevertheless, there isn't a single hunter in our village who would ever think of shooting such an animal, because everyone from around here has heard the legend about the unearthly power of the wolves with the white mark on their chest. They say that in ancient times, the forests weren't the same as they are today. They were tall, dark, impassable, and there was no end to them, no edge. The shaggy tops of the trees disappeared far into the sky, and the bushes and ivy that entangled them were so dense that the paths had to be cut with an axe. There was a small tribe living in one of these forests. Its leader was named Actomir. His daughter, Ange, was married to the best warrior of the tribe, Berkut, nicknamed for his extraordinary strength and prowess, and also for the fact that when he shook his spear, he looked like a formidable bird of prey. Either in battle or at the night fire, when the men of the tribe did ritual dances, led by the shaman with a tambourine who moved in circles as if possessed by some otherworldly forces, the animal skin on Berkut's shoulders rose like wings. The young people had a child who was just learning to walk. "Mama," the kid would say awkwardly, crawling around with such an expression in his big eyes, as if he was surprised that he actually managed to pronounce this word. His grandfather, the wise and glorious Actomir, and his mother and father were all delighted. "Say Grandpa, Grandpa," the old man kept trying to teach the kid, kneeling down beside him. "It's me, I'm your grandpa, your old grandpa," he said, pointing with his hand to his shaggy long beard. "Mama," said the child, tugging at Actomir's beard, and everyone laughed merrily. "Say Papa," the father asked, but all the kid could say was Mama, and once again everyone laughed out loud. "Sweetie," Ange picked up the child happily and took him to do the household chores, since that's one thing people of all times had to deal with. The people of this tribe lived in huts made of stone and branches. Overgrown with grass and shrubs, they looked little like human dwelling. A mountain range rose above the village from the north. The peaks were covered with white snowcaps. There were also swamps to the south of the village, which were emitting stinking odors at all times and had snakes crawling out of them. Midges and mosquitoes buzzed over the village. It wasn't exactly the best area, but the swamps had saved the village from enemy attacks more than once. Unaware of secret passages, enemies often drowned in the quagmire, screaming their death curses until their last breath. Wolves and bears often wandered into the village in search of easy prey. Lynxes hid in the branches of trees, hunting goats, which were bred by the villagers. Foxes came by to steal chickens. One day, Ange had to go to get water. The stream that the villagers got water from flowed in a shallow hollow, murmuring and gleaming through the thick foliage that covered it. The young woman left her child on the bank in the shade of a birch and set off towards the stream. Suddenly, she heard him crying. Her heart started pounding. "My boy," she thought, and rushed up. Seeing a huge she-wolf sniffing her son, the woman froze in horror. The animal turned around, growled at the woman, and grabbed the child with its teeth. Then it disappeared into the thickets in just a few jumps. People came rushing to the screaming of the unfortunate woman. The men immediately set off on the animal's trail, armed with bows, spears, and clubs. They spent 3 days and 3 nights in the forest, destroyed several animal lairs, but they never found the child. The parents were devastated. Years have passed. With the loss of her son, Ange seemed to also have lost both her youth and her beauty, for which she was once famous. No one in the village saw her laugh ever again, nor did they ever see a smile light up her face, dispelling, for at least a brief moment, the expression of misery and grief that forever hid in her wrinkles. Her hair started to turn gray. One day, Berkut had a dream. There was a young man that came out of the forest and knocked on their window. The young man was clearly starting to grow facial hair, and he had big muscles in his hands and legs. He looked like a real warrior. He was trying to say something. He looked worried. Berkut couldn't hear him and only kept repeating, "What? What are you saying? Who are you?" Then suddenly, his eyes stopped on a birthmark that was darkening on the young man's neck. Their child used to have the same kind of birthmark. "Son!" he shouted, and was about to run outside, but the young man suddenly turned into a dove, cried out desperately, hit the window with his wing, and disappeared into the sky. In the morning, Berkut told his wife everything. It was fall. Outside the window, an old and huge half-naked oak tree was loudly dropping the last acorns on the frost-covered ground strewn with leaves. Small spots of light jumped around the low stone walls of their hut, breaking through the trees, while tears flowed down the woman's face. "Gods are merciful. Maybe he really is alive." Her husband tried to console her, although he had long since lost all hope of seeing his son ever again. Having collected the proper gifts, he went to see the shaman. The child turned into a dove and flew away. "That's bad," the shaman said, sitting in a dark corner of his hut. Black from old age, mumbling something with his old mouth without teeth, the shaman got up, circled the man, fumigated the newcomer with herbal smoke, then beat the tambourine over his head and finished sparingly. "You will see your child, and very soon, but there will be no joy. There will be grief." Berkut left the shaman feeling very confused. He didn't say anything to his wife. He spent the whole day in his gloomy thoughts, furrowing his eyebrows in anguish. A week later, it started snowing. Snow covered the trees and bushes with a beautiful white blanket, while the first snowdrifts lay along the clearings. It was getting cold. The men were getting ready for a hunt. It was time to stock up on game. Over the summer, the animals have fattened up, and hunting them on the fresh, shallow snow was pure pleasure. Having passed the swamps, the hunters came across the footsteps of a wolf pack very soon, which meant that there was a family of deer nearby too. Deer are the main food for wolves during the winter. The footprints led them into dark and dense thickets where they'd never been before. The men prepared their arrows and drew their bows. But then the hunters found another footprint that didn't look like it belonged to a wolf or a deer or any other animal they knew. That's strange. What kind of animal could it be? The hunters were surprised. Those footprints got mixed with the wolves' ones and led the men to a steep and densely overgrown ravine. Such ravines, with their cavities made by the spring floods and covered with prickly and impenetrable thorns, made the perfect place for the wolves to arrange their lairs. The hunters went in different directions to encircle the area. Berkut raised his bow. He walked forward, sinking knee-deep in light, blinding snow and listening to every rustle, to every bird cry. Birds always raise a commotion when they see a predator. A couple of gray shadows rushed through the thickets at the very bottom of the ravine, in deep snow, but they quickly disappeared. Then, a little later, a third, mature wolf appeared as if out of nowhere. It growled angrily and menacingly, showing its impressive fangs, and also disappeared, as if falling through the ground. Berkut drew his bow, getting ready to shoot. Then, suddenly, an unknown creature rose from the thickets, snow falling off its body. Was it an animal or a man? It was impossible to tell. The creature stood up like a bear and rushed at Berkut, roaring menacingly. The man shot an arrow and grabbed his knife, ready to fight, when he heard, "Mama! Mama!" The creature groaned bitterly, plaintively, humanly. Berkut's mind went dizzy. He rushed towards the fallen creature, clearly breathing its last breath. It turned out to be a young man, the same one that came to him in a dream, with his head and legs dressed in animal skins. Unwilling to believe in what had just happened, Berkut quickly turned away the skins, when suddenly he saw a small birthmark on the creature's neck, covered in blood. "Oh heaven! I killed my own child!" he yelled, dropping to his knees. "I killed my son!" His cry cut like thunder and through the gloomy, age-old silence of the forest. The young man was buried in the family cemetery outside the village. His mother, Ange, also died soon after. Her heart couldn't bear losing her son again. At night, wolves howled at the cemetery, coming from all corners of the forest to mourn the death of the young man who had become one of their own. Their long and inconsolable howling resounded around the area for many years, frightening people and animals alike. Thus, rumors started spreading about that tribe, claiming that its patroness was a certain heavenly she-wolf from which it had descended. The tribe is guarded by wolves, the real forest ones, with whom the people of this tribe have some kind of a mysterious connection. With time, they started being called the Sons of the Gray Wolf with a white mark on their chest.